Have you ever heard the tale of the incredible Mr. Gassy? No? Well, it all begins in 1967. Two armed men were on the run after an armed robbery from a local Spencer's. Incredible Gassy gets a whiff of this from the radio and immediately pursues this exciting chase. However, on the way, Gassy is stopped on the road by a woman with her pussy hanging out on the tree. After much resistance, Gassy manages to force his way through by grabbing his wood and shaking it until the woman's pussy wore out. The useless cops, who already lost track of the Spencer's robbers, stopped on their way to congratulate Gassy's gang. As Gassy got back in his car, he was greeted by the Make-A-Wish kid Downey. Gassy, who already fulfilled Downey's wishes of no longer being a virgin, kicked him out of this car immediately. After being sidetracked, Gassy managed to track down the Spencer's robbers. However, before Gassy could use his gassing superpowers, the robber was taken out by a mysterious figure. Hiding in the shadows was Mrs. Stretchy, who took on her high school nickname as her hero name. Gassy was in awe of the possibilities of Stretchy's powers, and started working his game on Stretchy. It seemed to be working before Stretchy started talking about her body count. Horrified, Gassy accidentally activated his defense mechanism, which was letting a huge one out. Stretchy was disgusted with the smell, and immediately fled the premises. Frustrated, Gassy decides on an alternative and uses the handcuffs from Spencer's to incapacitate the robber, and let out his frustrations onto him. In the middle of the action, a man who was watching Gassy from above was so disgusted that he decided to kill himself. Gassy spots the man attempting to commit suicide and uses his gas to propel himself, and catch the man before he could end his own life. Surprisingly, Gassy managed to pull this off, however the man was in a severe state of trauma. Unbeknownst to him, crashing into this building would lead Gassy to his most vile and evil enemy yet. A Frenchman. Gassy was about to have a train ran on him. However, thanks to his incredible grip, Gassy was able to endure it, taking on the whole train. Afterwards, Downey was arrested for violating Gassy's restraining order 67 times. The very same night he had a train ran on him, Gassy got married to Mrs. Stretchy, and had the most toe-curling moment of his life. However, right after this, Gassy's life was turned upside down. It turns out that Gassy accidentally cracked the suicidal man that jumped from the building, leading to him sustaining back injuries. Because of this, many other civilians started suing superheroes that cracked them, for a quick hustle. Fast forward about 16 or 17 years, and Gassy now works at a dead-end 9-to-5. Stretchy is a stay-at-home mom. This man's anus was permanently stretched by 6 inches. At school, Mason cracked one too many 6-7 jokes, and the teacher, annoyed by his antics, gave him detention. Mason did not take this lightly, so he quickly plopped his mother's massive 20-inch bad dragon onto the teacher's seat. As a result, the bad dragon was confiscated and Mason was expelled. On the way home, Mason was scolded by Stretchy for stealing her 20-inch toy, and was banned from gooning. While this was all happening, Goonette used her X-ray vision to look at a boy's grippers. Unfortunately, Goonette was caught, and was also banned from gooning. This man goons with his family every day. Whoa. Gassy had to pay off his debts after getting sued, so he worked every day constantly grinding. His boss was Jewish, so as you would expect, Gassy doesn't make much money. The only thing on his mind all day was the family gooning session every night. Upon learning that the family gooning session was cancelled, Gassy immediately left to goon alone in his room. Mason and Goonette were on edge the whole time, and finally snapped after Gassy left. In his room, as Gassy started scrolling on X, he finds out that his homeboy went missing. Gassy was no longer in the mood to goon anymore, so he comes back to dinner, only to be met with a chaotic scene. While the family was having a massive fight, Goonzone stopped by, and gifted Mrs. Stretchy an ice dildo. While Stretchy was occupied, Gassy and Goonzone went out on a two-man. However, during the two-man, Gassy accidentally passed some gas, and the building erupted into flames. After narrowly escaping the fire, the pair were immediately under arrest for indecent exposure. Goonzone had the ability to freeze his nut, so he started stroking intensely. As the officer shot his bullet, Goonzone shot 5 generations at the officer, freezing him in place. After 2 close calls, the pair called it a day and went home. In the end, the pair were totally oblivious to the federal agent that was closely monitoring them. Gassy was caught by his wife after going on a two-man with his BBC friend. The two get into a heated argument, and just before Gassy was about to get pegged by his wife, their 2 little goon springs came out to cool things down. The very next day, Gassy spots 2 men cracking each other. Gassy wanted to start gooning to relieve some stress, however his Jewish boss banned gooning in the workplace because it hindered with profits. Gassy, blinded by rage, unleashed a full-force gas attack, crippling his boss for life. Gassy was fired, and had no job to pay off his debts or feed his family. Although life seemed rough for Gassy, a new opportunity would arise. Gassy was sent an invite to Epstein's Island. Apparently, a mysterious client savored the scent of Gassy's gas, and was willing to pay top dollar for just a whiff of it. However, Gassy had been wearing cologne every day for over 16 years. How could someone identify the Incredible Gassy's true identity after all these years? Although this was incredibly suspicious, Gassy still reminisced of the glory days, and wanted back into the big leagues, so he decided to go. After making an excuse to his wife, Gassy put on the rancid costume for the first time since 1967, and hopped on the next flight to Epstein's Island. After landing on Epstein's Island, Gassy was immediately pursued by the Goonie Droid. The Goonie Droid was designed specifically to be able to goon even the strongest superhuman to death. Gassy proved to be no match for the Goonie Droid, and his seed was taken. As the droid started sucking the life force out of his body and all hope seemed lost, Gassy suddenly released a huge shard attack, incapacitating the Goonie Droid. Luckily for him, the Goonie Droid accidentally probed too deep into Gassy's backside, triggering his innate super special shard attack. As all of this was unfolding, the mysterious client was analyzing the situation, plotting his next move. Gassy was back into the big leagues. After releasing his gas for the mysterious patron, Gassy returned from Epstein's Island and turned his life around. He started cracking his wife more, gooned with Goonette, got a new car, taught Mason how to throw, fed Labubu some Dubai chocolate, started hitting the gym again, and after his day was over, he cracked even more. It was like Gassy was experiencing his second glory days. His dick even grew an extra 6 inches. However, his work was still not finished, and he would have to return to Epstein's Island. Before going back to the island, Gassy needed a new suit after sharding in his old one, so he stopped by an old friend. Before returning to Epstein's Island, Gassy visits his old friend to get a new costume. His old friend was actually a retired Temu worker, so she had years of industry experience. While going over ideas for his new costume, Gassy suggests adding a cape. However, Temu warned Gassy of the dangers of having a cape, as it could reduce the efficiency of Gassy's gas powers, and could even work against him like other superheroes in the past. After finalizing ideas for his new costume, Gassy went back home to prepare for the flight. At home, Mrs. Stretchy found one of the Gilf's jungle hairs on Gassy's clothes. This raised suspicions of her husband cheating on her, so she went out to confront him. Gassy admitted to cheating again, and Mrs. Stretchy forgave him because, although the Gilf had his body, Stretchy had his mind and soul. On the flight, Gassy finally wears his iconic green costume.
This is your automated captain. Would you care for more mimosa? Don't mind if I do. Thanks. You're welcome.
After coming back to Epstein's Island, the Gilf briefs Gassy on his next mission. Since the Goonie Droid was defeated, he would have to fight another droid, but this time the droid was tuned specifically to defeat Gassy. Since it was designed with Gassy's powers in mind, it was dubbed the Gassy Droid. Back at home, Mrs. Stretchy was snooping around in Gassy's room, wanting to get another whiff of Gassy's smell. While sniffing Gassy's old costume, Stretchy notices that the shark stains on Gassy's suit was gone, and suspected that Temu was the one who cleaned up the mess. On the island, Gassy was sent out to fight the Gassy Droid, however it was completely impervious to Gassy's gas, which made it impossible for Gassy to defeat. Just before the Gassy Droid could slime out Gassy, the mysterious client revealed himself.
It's finally ready! Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
After being rejected by his idol, Downey swore vengeance on Gassy. Back when he was a young boy in 1967, Downey was obsessed with the Incredible Gassy. He would follow Gassy everywhere to collect his gas in jars and smell them all day. He even took on the name of Gassy Boy in honor of the Incredible Gassy and went everywhere that Gassy went. However, Gassy didn't like this one bit and filed a restraining order on Downey. Downey didn't care at all and would go on and violate the restraining order 41 times, which led him straight to prison where he would get his cheeks clapped every day until he got released. After being released, Downey was fueled by pure hatred. After taking away Gassy's ability to walk, Downey Syndrome started talking about how the time he spent in prison made him attracted to dudes. While Downey Syndrome was monologuing, Gassy uses the opportunity to try and escape. However, Downey managed to use his time-freezing abilities to freeze Gassy and crack him again. Just before Downey could put it inside of the gas hole, Gassy uses his gas-propelling ability to escape and hid in a cave. Inside of this cave was his missing homeboy, Gassy Beam. Although Gassy Beam was slimed out by the Goonie Droid, his death was not in vain, as he used his gas beams to spell out the password of Downey's hard drive, which included terabytes of gooning material. After confirming that Gassy had been slimed out, Downey Syndrome goes back into his lair. However, Gassy was still alive and managed to escape from Downey's drones by hiding behind Gassy Beam's slimed-out body. Meanwhile, at the Sheen factory, Mrs. Stretchy confronts Timu for cleaning Gassy's shart stains because she wanted to smell them more. Timu makes up for this by using her Chinese child servants to pump out suits for Mrs. Stretchy, Goonette, Mason, and even Labubu. However, Stretchy was still unsatisfied and wanted to know where Gassy was so that she could smell his gas more. Back on Epstein's Island, Gassy sneaks around the perimeter and takes down Epstein's goons. However, in order to enter Downey's lair, Gassy would have to go past the wall of molten bodily fluids from the heroes that the Goonie Droid gooned out. Luckily for Gassy, the Gilf opened the wall, allowing Gassy to sneak past and enter Downey's nut room. After sitting on the sticky seat, Gassy uses the password that Gassy Beam carved out in the cave to access Downey's hard drive. Gassy learns that all of his closest homeboys had been slimed out. Gassy Jack, Gassy Beam, Bowser, Sergeant Brap Hog, all gone because of the Gassy Droid. Then, Gassy stumbles across something massive. It was the Epstein files. Just as Gassy was about to leave with the contents of the Epstein files, Mrs. Stretchy activates his tracker, which triggered the sensors in the room. Suddenly, hundreds of latex beads flew up into Gassy's crack, clogging his digestive tract, disabling his gas attack. It was all a trap designed to fish out Gassy from his hiding spot. After finding out that Gassy was on Epstein's Island, Mrs. Stretchy brings her two children, Mason and Goonette, with her so that they could have a fun family bonding time on Epstein's Island. Meanwhile, Gassy was held captive by Downey in his underground freaky dungeon. Downey was extracting the gas from Gassy's body, which was considered a luxurious commodity by the elites. Gassy tried to use his gas powers, however the beads up his crack prevented him from releasing his gas. Just as things seemed hopeless, it would only get worse for Gassy. Downey detects a foreign airborne object nearing the island and interrogates Gassy, suspecting that he contacted the feds to his private island. Gassy denies this, however he recognizes the voice on the radio. It was his wife, Mrs. Stretchy. Downey sees the look in Gassy's face, confirming that the people on the plane were his allies, so Downey sends the plane a nice little gift. On the plane, Mrs. Stretchy and her kids were discussing about what they were going to do on the island. Stretchy hired a housekeeper to take care of the house and Labubu for them. They were all set to have a great family bonding time. Just as they were about to land on the island, the gift that Downey sent them showed up. The gift turned out to be a gas missile and destroyed the entire plane. After realizing that his entire lineage had been eliminated, Gassy crashes out and tries to slime out Downey. However, his Gilf girlfriend gets in the way. Gassy threatens to crack the Gilf in front of Downey's face. However, Downey was into that kind of stuff, so it had no effect. Gassy lets go of the Gilf and Downey leaves in disappointment. However, this attempt to escape wouldn't be for nothing, as the Gilf started to develop real feelings for Gassy. It turned out that Gassy's family actually survived the attack thanks to Mrs. Stretchy's useful abilities. The family, still wanting to have their vacation, came up with an ingenious plan. Stretchy would stretch herself into a boat and Mason would paddle their way to the island, while Goonette would do absolutely nothing. After a whole day of stroking, Mason had been worn out, and Stretchy as well. The family would make their way to a cave and started bonding together. Mrs. Stretchy starts talking about her glory days in college and how she earned the nickname of Mrs. Stretchy. Goonette was amazed by the stories and asked Stretchy for advice. Although the family vacation hadn't gone to plan, they were still having a great time. After extracting enough gas from Gassy, Downey syndrome was able to construct a massive gas missile that had the capability to gas entire cities. Downey had been working with Jeffrey Epstein ever since he got out of prison. With Downey's intellect and Epstein's connections, they were an unstoppable duo. Downey had done enough work for the day, so he went to crack his gilf girlfriend, however she wasn't in the mood. Meanwhile, Stretchy was sneaking around, infiltrating Epstein's island. Her superpower was the perfect tool for espionage, able to dodge soldiers and fit through tight cracks with ease. Also, she could give herself a fat BBL at will. Unfortunately for her, a door closed in on her while she was checking out her BBL, trapping her in a vulnerable position. Two soldiers spotted the bakery and tried to get some buns, however Stretchy tightened herself, crushing their dicks. Meanwhile, Mason and Goonie were devising a plan. Mason would traverse through the underground tunnels, while Goonie would watch out for him. This would turn out to be a huge mistake for Mason, as 67 tons of gas ripped through the tunnel. While infiltrating Epstein's island, Mrs. Stretchy finds out about the massive gas missile that was heading straight towards the World Trade Center. However, she was too late to stop it from launching. Meanwhile, in the underground freaky dungeon, Gassy was freed from his shackles by the gilf. Gassy still believed that his entire family had been eliminated, so he immediately tries to slime out the gilf. Just before Gassy could release his lethal gas attack, the gilf informs Gassy that his family had in fact survived the attack. Gassy, overwhelmed with relief and joy, starts to crack the gilf. However, Mrs. Stretchy catches them in the act. The gilf actually didn't know that the family had survived the attack and believed that Gassy was a widow, so she tries to explain herself, but Mrs. Stretchy lays her out cold. Stretchy was about to land one on Gassy too, but Gassy's game was impeccable and he immediately persuaded Mrs. Stretchy to enter an open marriage. Meanwhile, after narrowly escaping being turned into a pile of ash by 67 tons of gas, Mason and Goonie were on the run from Epstein's traffickers and Palantir drones. The two had been pursued for hours and were running out of steam. Just before they were about to surrender, they were finally reunited with their parents. Jeffrey Epstein was still actively trying to traffic the kids and wouldn't stop until they were captured. However, the Gassy family's teamwork was unstoppable and they were about to get away until Epstein's strongest disciple, Downey syndrome, showed up. Downey uses his time freeze ability to capture the entire family and started to monologue about how he used to goon to Mrs. Stretchy when he was a young boy back in 1967. After locking the family up in the underground freaky dungeon, Downey finally explained his master plan. Downey would first send the Gassy droid out to eliminate any potential threats to Epstein and his allies. After the Gassy droid completed its task, Downey would then enter the second phase of his plan, which is to switch up on Epstein and claim his spot at the top. Then for the final phase, Downey would extract all of the gas from Gassy and sell it to his rich clients, and when he made enough money, Downey would share the gas with the commoners and peasants. And when everyone is Gassy,
no one will.
Down in Ohio, the Gassy droid was deployed to eliminate Epstein's most wanted targets. After putting an end to Gerbert the pervert, Adrian and his friend group were next on the chopping block. The US military was sent out to prevent the droid from reaching Adrian, however they were no match for the droid's overwhelming power. As the family watched the Gassy droid tear apart their friends, Gassy apologized for getting the family caught up in this mess and how he wished they could all just goon together in peace. Suddenly, Goonie uses her discharge bubble to phase out of her shackles, and freed the whole family. Gassy and his family had escaped the underground freaky dungeon and were trying to find a way out of the dreadful island. Luckily for them, the gilf was still in charge of the island, and gave them one of Downey's spare gas rockets. After Gassy cracked the rest of Epstein's goons, the family was set to leave the island. After retiring from his hero work, Chris became the owner of a barbershop in which the haircuts only costed a quarter. As Chris got ready to go to work, he spots the Gassy droid heading straight towards his barbershop. Chris asks his mom to get his super suit, however she was too busy eating fries. As the Gassy droid was about to eviscerate the crowd of civilians, Downey syndrome showed up just in time to save the day. Although he looked like a professional hero, this was actually all just a stunt for Downey to aura farm. However, while in the middle of performing for the crowd, the Gassy droid gets tired of Downey's lame awe and switches up on him. Downey immediately folded upon learning that the Gassy droid was now out of his control and passed out. Meanwhile, Gassy was cutting it up in traffic and managed to get there just in time before the Gassy droid could spread more terror. Right after Gassy parked his car, the droid wasted no time attempting to slime out Gassy's family. Just before Mason was about to be turned into tomato paste, Goonie shows up and uses her discharge bubble to shield them. However, it wasn't enough to stop the onslaught of the relentless Gassy droid. Gassy rushed to save his two kids. His time in the gym helped him keep the Gassy droid at bay long enough for Mason to carrying Goonie away, However, the Gassy droid wasn't new to the game and flung him straight into a building. As Gassy brutally shoulder checks the droid, his friend Goonzone arrives to help. Goonzone used his frozen seaman ability to distract the droid. However, the droid wasn't playing any games. After Gassy wakes up from his concussion, he finds the Gassy droid's remote right next to him. However, instead of using it without the Gassy droid knowing, Gassy announces to the whole city that he found the remote, and the Gassy droid wasted no time getting it back. Mason uses his superb baseball abilities to catch the remote. However, he slips on the Seaman and loses it. Before the Gassy droid could take it back, Stretchy and Goonzone used their powers to trip the robot, allowing Goonette to take the remote and send the droid flying straight towards the World Trade Center. Gassy now realized the only way to stop the Gassy droid was to have it penetrate itself, just like the Goonie Droid. As Goonzone held back the Gassy droid with his Seaman, Stretchy used the remote to accelerate the claw rocket. After Gassy lets go of the rocket, it pierces straight through the Gassy droid, putting an end to its shenanigans. The city came out to cheer them on. Two old heads smelled Gassy's gas and started reminiscing of the Gassy days. Downey awakes from his coma and seethes with anger upon learning that the Gassy droid had been defeated. After getting their thanks, the family returns home with Saul Goodman, who was Gassy's personal lawyer back in 1967 when he got sued. Just as things seem to all work out, Stretchy gets a distress call from the babysitter. It turned out that a man with Down syndrome had entered their home and snagged up Labubu. The family rushed inside their home, however it was all too late. Epstein's strongest disciple was already there. Downey was gonna take Labubu and send him to Epstein's Island where unspeakable things would happen. Luckily, Labubu went through puberty early and developed his superpower, allowing him to break free from Downey's clutches. Although Labubu was safe, Gassy had enough of Downey's shenanigans and chucked a vehicle at his private jet. Just like Timu said, a cape will get you graped, and Downey was shredded into pieces by the turbine. As the remnants of the jet fell down toward the family, Goonette uses her discharge bubble to shield them from the debris, and just like that, it was all over. 3 months after the Incredible Gassys got back to their normal lives, Goonette finally stopped gooning and started talking to dudes more, and even got a date with Chad. After Mason gets his 67th consecutive win in his baseball league, the family decided to goon together at home to celebrate. However, trouble came their way. It was the digger, who dug through septic tanks to collect poo. The city needed a hero, and luckily for them, the Incredible Gassys were already there, ready to save the day.